This conference will now be recorded.
Well, hi everybody, and welcome back to the final talk in our 2018 Summer Speaker Series. I'm Adam Elenbaas. You're hanging out at Nightlight Astrology if you've never been here before. And tonight, a little encore presentation. We're hosting Gemini Brett for his talk, Reflections on Soul, Mysteries of the Moon. And before I introduce Brett and get into this evening's talk, I want to just tell you a little bit about the speaker series and how you can donate for this evening's talk and things like that. So first of all, I just asked that everybody be on mute. So I'm actually going to manually mute everybody right now except for Brett. And here we go. I'll unmute Brett. And if you're on the phone, be sure to place your phone on mute. And don't be offended during the evening if for any reason your microphone comes online. I will mute you or try to mute you as quickly as I can, or Brett might have to mute you. And you'll hear a little voice that'll say, "You've been muted," but don't be offended. It's just that we can't have any, background noise going on. I also want to tell you a little bit about the speaker series. So the speaker series is something I started, gosh, it's been a while now. It's been 5 or 6 years. And the intention of the series was to offer a donation-based 2 or 3 week series of talks that were open to the public, that were free if you couldn't afford it, donation-based with a range, suggested scale of donation if you could. And basically over the years, the program has grown and we've had, lots of interesting speakers and talks come through. And it's really grown, I think, for me anyway, it's grown my friendships and interest in other forms of astrology. And I've learned so much that I didn't know about. So for me, I consider this also sort of like an indulgence in my own education. I always try to have people that I personally take interest in or that I find compelling in some way. And also people who practice things that are very different from maybe what I practice or preach. And people know that I like to preach. I'm a preacher's kid. So at any rate, the program is also a form of seva, which means service. So to support other astrologers and to expose my students to voices other than my own in the classroom that they're in with me, for example, and for all that we earn and raise to give all of that directly to our speakers. So that's kind of the mission of this this program: community education, community hangout space, and supporting and building the practices of other astrologers and learning from other astrologers. So with that being said, tonight we'll be taking donations for Brett, and here's how you can do that. I'm going to put this into the box. 15 to 25 suggested. Some people already donated for this talk because we held the same talk a few weeks ago, and unfortunately the audio video file was lost in the process, and we had a good number of people donate and ask for the recording, and so we're redoing this tonight to make sure that we stay true in our promise to give people the audio video that they ordered, but also because this was wildly popular talk. I had so much positive feedback from people, my own students, lots of people. It was very engaging and interesting. And so I thought, there's a lot of people who couldn't attend that wanted to attend. And so I thought, well, let's just do it again. Let's get the audio video down. We don't have to refund a bunch of people. And we'll ring the bell again for Brett, for those people who weren't here for the first one tonight as well. So if you were here for the first one, please don't feel obligated to donate unless you'd like to, in which case, please do. And here's the link. It's in the chat box right now. Suggested donation is $15 to $25 for the night. Everything that we raise goes right to supporting our speaker. And if you're an aspiring student of astrology, you're hoping to have a practice of your own or something like that, get in the habit of supporting other astrologers. It's good karma, it's a good thing to do. So give what you can. If you can give more than 25, please do. that certainly helps for those who can't afford as much. If you can't afford anything tonight, that's fine. Please just be here. Find a way of passing it forward. Take the knowledge, passion that Brett inspires in you and give it to someone else. In that way, lots of good astrology is becomes it proliferates and spreads around the world, and that's what we really want, because astrology is it's not just astrology, but it's the kind of inquiry and the level of imagination and inquiry and science and mysticism that especially someone like Brett brings. We see more of that in the world, I think really good things can happen. So at any rate, that's my spiel. I'm going to introduce our speaker now, so you know how to make a donation. Going back to here, you can see Brett's bio.
So the bio is a bit of a tongue twister, you know.
Right.
We can read that, or I could just kind of introduce myself, and you can get to
yeah. Why don't you introduce us to you? That would be great. And I'm going to hand it over to Brett now. Brett's going to tell us stories. And I'll just say this personally. I met Brett at NORWAC a few years ago, and I found him to be one of the most compelling and contagious and fun personalities that I met at NORWAC. And you know, I wish we had more time to hang out at UAC, but I'm sure I'll be at NORWAC again next spring. Maybe you will be too. So hopefully we'll get to hang out more. But yeah, I think you guys are all, if you haven't hung out with Brett before, you're in for a treat. And if you have, then you're obviously back for a reason. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Brett.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so we get to a little retrograde, do this again, and in a different way. Oftentimes my my presentations are like hundreds of slides and like very dialed in, and just in the creation of the thing, it kind of steers me and how I'm. Okay, a presentation here a bit ago to go a little more analog. So I want to share a bit about that. Some of my greatest astrology teachers over the last couple of years have been the compass and the square, and the keyboard. And there's a set of sacred sciences known as the quadrivium, which are all about number in nature, number in space, which is geometry, number in time, which is musical harmony, and number in space and time, which is astronomy. And these are the kind of main ways that I'm approaching astrology in my own quest these days of understanding and teaching. So just a little bit about me. My name is Gemini Brett. I'm relatively new to astrology. Just got the call in October 2012. There was a total solar eclipse 6 minutes from my north node. I had no idea. And a few days later, I had my first astrology reading, and then just dove in and had this strange conversation with Jupiter from the jungles of Peru shortly thereafter, and kind of got my marching orders and went to work and was just trading sessions while I was learning. And very soon, people I was trading with started sending friends to me, and I realized I could do this like for money. And then people started showing up with significant hangups and issues, and I was able quickly to help them help themselves, and was just amazed with the power of astrology. So I was just full on at that point. And everyone here, I know you have the bug, and here we are, committed and devoted to an endless study, right? So in a way, I started practicing sooner than we would recommend folks to. But I realize as well that astrology is a language, if you will, that has helped me focus my research and my study in so many esoteric realms and bring it into something where it can actually be communicated. And it opens, as I'm sure this is true for so many of you as well, that it really opens my access to the intuitive side of self, or we could say the curved side of self. So I wanted to play with a little geometry today in this quest, which is really, what is the moon? We're in this time, as you know, of a triple eclipse season, which is not entirely rare, but relatively so. And finding out why we can have a triple eclipse, I think we'll look at some of that today. It's been a really fascinating exploration for me. And people, I think, know me as kind of astronomy for astrologers expert, and I'm really devoted to bringing astrologers to a living connection with the sky and learning to see the chart in the sky and see the sky in the chart. It's so easy for us to devote the little time we have as students to learning to read the chart, right? But it's unfortunate, I feel, that we don't begin with getting outside and showing how the sun moves and the moon and seeing that in the chart, because we've lost a bit of our connection to nature. I think we are all aware of this as human beings, and one of the ways that's happening in the bright city lights is our disconnect from the night and from the day, and doing physical shadow work, putting a stick in the ground and seeing how the shadow moves during the day. This is a lot of things that I'm teaching professional astrologers, just to help us re-nature our craft, because the quest here and the quest in the compass and the square and in the keyboard is to reclaim the roots of the rules and the proofs of the equations we use. I'm not really out to convert the rationalist scientists. I am certainly here to answer the challenges they present for our craft, which I think we should. And I don't think we're meant to anymore run into a space of just, oh, it's some symbolic archetypal language. No, this is a divine science. And I really love to say we should keep our sacred science sacred by keeping it scientific, and keep it scientific by keeping it sacred. But that scientific side of really learning what the zodiac is, why it is not untrue, the tropical zodiac, simply because signs and constellations don't align, addressing some of this 13th sign conundrum that's all a buzz over the last few years and whatnot. And so anyway, I want to speak a little bit about the compass and square today, because when we ask these questions of, well, how will this triple eclipse play for me, right, in my own nativity, to really discuss an eclipse, which is three things, right? A syzygy, it's Earth, Moon, and Sun. Well, what is the Earth? What is the Moon? What is the Sun? And if all of my stuff hadn't been put into boxes in a U-Haul and driven down to California recently, I could point to 100 books over here that all have different opinions, with similarities. And one thing that my students hear from me right at the beginning and often is, I'm not here to teach you my astrology. I'm here to further remind you to remember yours. She has enough Gemini Bretts. And I really don't want to say in any way that this cosmology I'm here to present today, which I'm exploring through geometry even more than anything else, is the one and only way. In fact, I reserve the right to change my mind and heart tonight. But I think it's very important for us to just slow down and check in these amazing gateways like an eclipse and say, okay, well, what is Earth? And what is the moon? And what is sun? So Adam wasn't here a couple of weeks ago because new life, a new daughter came around. And the question is, well, how did the moon participate in this spirit, this soul coming to Earth, a new being? Right? And what does the moon really mean in our chart? So I think we learn to delineate charts as we should. And for example, this triple eclipse, the Leo eclipse, the third solar, lunar, solar, right, in 2018, in the Northern Hemisphere summer, Cancer, partial solar eclipse, Aquarius, total lunar eclipse, and Leo, partial solar eclipse. The last of those three was in my 4th house. And I'm eclipsing my house. The plan was to rent it and move to California. I'm following love and family and stars. I live in Seattle now and have for some time. And looking back, it's like, wow, the last time I moved back to California was 18 years ago. And if you know eclipses and eclipse cycles, well, 18 is the Saros cycle. So that was interesting to see. And here's Mercury retrograde in my 4th house and moving back to California, you see. And actually the day that Mercury retrograded, suddenly I got the news from somewhere, probably Mercury, that actually I should just sell this house and not rent it and commit a little bit more. And so, you know, this is a thing we do, I think, as astrologers. And as far as I'm concerned, anyone who's following the planets are astrologers. You don't have to be practicing with your shingle on the door to call yourself that. You know, there's very few of us. How many people knew that this was the longest total lunar eclipse of the 21st century? How many people even knew that there was a lunar eclipse a couple of weeks ago? How many people even knew there was a full moon that night? Right, so a lot of people knew it was a full moon but didn't know it was an eclipse. Kind of scary are the people who like knew it was a lunar eclipse and didn't know it was a full moon, but also possible. But the answer to all of these questions is very few, a very small percentage of people. So we astrologers, we're really carrying a responsibility that I think we should talk about more, which is that we are the narrators for the celestial symphony. And that comes, I personally believe, with the responsibility of looking at how we language, looking at how we share. Astrology in general has, over time, had a lot of fear built into it. And I'm certainly not about running away from the shadow play or avoiding in any sense the darkness. I think I have a Dark Side Initiative shirt on, actually celebrating the eclipses. But our language is our reality. You know, in the beginning was the word, and we are manifesting through collectively, consciously. And so for those of us who are tracking and speaking for planets, I think we really want to look in and see how we're doing that. And it's very hard in this time of the amazing diversity of souls on this planet and souls as astrologers in different paradigms of astrology to even wish for, you know, everyone coming at the sacred art in the same way or expressing it in the same way. Just want to be more conscious of how we're doing that. So one thing we do as astrologers is we look ahead, right? And so I'm seeing this eclipse coming into my 4th house. I'm in a ton of Uranus right now. My sun is the 1st degree of Scorpio. And it's conjoined Uranus in my nativity and square Saturn. So, you know, Uranus is really playing right now. It's like, oh, I want to free myself up to choose change before change chooses me, like practice what I preach. And here's this eclipse in my 4th house, and it's time for a move. And life situations have opened up for that. But then there's always things that we can't plan for, right? So my mother's just, it looks, we're kind of waiting on some more blood tests and whatnot, but seems to have been diagnosed with cancer quite recently. And so another signature, very possibly, of this eclipse in the 4th house, right? So depends on who you ask, depends on what paradigm you ask. And it also seems that maybe this is one of the reasons why I've been called back to California even before I really knew that as a principal reason of the move, right? So we, I think, need to be careful with not being too linear with our astrology and allowing it to play and understanding that, how is it said? Any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple. Not the wisest being can count the number of apples in a seed. This is a game of potentials, yeah, not promises. And I really prefer, rather than saying this term that we use and I use, of reading, that in so many ways implies that I can read you as a book. You know, I love to treat the chart as your work of art, as your sacred song. And the song holds some of the fate of the thing. And the planets surrounded Earth at the time of the birth and played this amazing chord. You know, each planet is its own specific instrument with its own timbre and tone, singing the note of the sign in which it resides. And there is this chord happening around the Earth. And we measure astrology from the center of Earth, right? So it's happening there and she's broadcasting it out. So our experience of the above is actually measured from the below. It's an important thing, I think, for us to know. But that chord is happening, and it sings of the song of your soul, I will say, and what's ahead for you in this lifetime. But while that's the fate of the thing, and I've had to come to honor fate, because all the time we read people dates and they laugh or they cry. That's when I met the guy. That's when dad died. You know, I mean, it's mind-blowing for me every time still. But free will also. And we can dance to a song any way we choose. We can even choose not to dance at all. And I'm very honored to sit daily with dancers. And then how are we going to do that? How can we use predictive astrology productively? How can I look in my case and say, okay, eclipse in the 4th house, you've been talking about moving out of the Seattle cloud and to see the stars more for years. Maybe this is the time. Now there's love and a destination where the stars shine. Maybe it's time, you know. But also, what can't we predict? And let's make sure that we allow our curves and not only do the lines. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's start with circles. A circle. So I made a little flip book for the beginning of our journey today. My students these days, they don't pay for lesson number 1. They show up here, or maybe online, but here they come and we drink some tea. And I hand them a compass, you know, and it's like, and the invitation is go draw 108 circles and come back. And as you can imagine, many of them never do. So really, I'm investing in lesson 1 because I give them a compass. And there's a little bit of, okay, is this being ready to wax on and wax off a little bit? Karate Kid quote, if you guys don't know that movie, I might be dating myself, but willing to do the chop wood, carry water and the work without knowing why we're doing it. It's such an important thing in astrology, right? Because some people who are very urgent about learning the craft, right? Like, I mean, I want to know why my girlfriend is psychotic, might say a student who's sitting here, and I'm like, draw circles, right? But there's a very beautiful thing about not rushing the way and understanding as well that when we're truly engaging with the depths of this amazing art of astrology, some of it really cannot be communicated, right? I mean, so in the mystery schools, there's a lot said about you're not allowed to reveal the truths you found here. And I think some of that, at least some of that, applies to the truth that these truths cannot be spoken of in word. So we're not allowed, not just because the high priest says so, but literally because it's impossible. So I'm really enjoying in my own adventure these days and exploring through the compass and the square and the keyboard and with the living sky. So a very recent student, when I invited her to draw 108 circles, she said, oh, do you know this poem, Circles by Hafiz? And I did not until she pointed me in that direction. This is one of the most beautiful things about teaching the craft is we really get to learn, right? And so here's Circles by Hafiz. The moon is most happy when it is full, and the sun always looks like a perfectly minted gold coin that was just polished and placed in flight by God's playful kiss. And so many varieties of fruit hang plump and round from branches that seem like a sculptor's hands. I see the beautiful curve of a pregnant belly shaped by a soul within. In the earth itself, in the planets, in the spheres, I have gotten the hint. There is something about circles the beloved likes. Hafiz, within the circle of a perfect one, there is an infinite community of light. I'll read something older, and this from Hermes Trismegistus, the Emerald Tablets, which in so many ways seem to have been responsible for the Renaissance. I'll just leave that as a seed that you can sprout if you choose. 'Tis true without lying, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of one only thing. And as all things have been, and arose from one by the mediation of one, so all things have their birth in this one thing by adaptation. The sun is its father, the moon its mother, the wind hath carried it in its belly, the earth its nurse. The father of all perfection in the whole world is here. Its force is entire, if it be converted into earth. Separate thou the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, sweetly and with great ingenuity. It ascends from earth to the heavens, and again it descends to the earth, receiving the force of things superior and inferior. By this means you shall have the glory of the whole world, and thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. Its force is above all force, for it vanquishes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. So was the world created. And the marvelous conjunctions of it, since this is the process by which these marvels can be brought about. Hence I am called Hermes Trismegistus, having the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. Are these those three parts? How did you learn this? Right? These three elements of which all of the symbols we currently use, the glyphs to represent the visible lights, are formed. The circle of spirit, the crescent of soul, and the cross of matter. And then we turn the page. And I have a really hard time turning the page when I hear things like that today. I'm a bit of a rebel student. I am a Sun Uranus, but also I grew up in a church that's called science class. And I was taught in that church to ridicule astrology, this archaic idiocy. And while I didn't do this vehemently like a good science student would, I never really had a look at astrology until very, well, later in life. And I'm angry about that in many senses. I mean, I'll say that the most beautiful thing about the path is you can't leave it. And so all in divine timing, right? But I have a mistrust for teachers that's even more profound than it was when I was young, and it was strong then. So when I hear a teacher or a book telling me that this is the circle of spirit and the crescent of soul and the cross of matter, I say, why? And I ask that question so often, and I didn't begin to receive an answer is a tricky word, but I'll say, because these are the questions that can only be answered with better questions, I'll say I didn't begin to receive the better questions until I started playing myself with the compass and the square, drawing these geometries that I had witnessed on YouTube, you know, for hours on end. But there's something else when you take the compass in your hand. In fact, here's that G word again, but they say that when you put the compass in your hand, you become God. And actually, if we approach this practice, if we approach the sacred art of astrology, if we approach the living sky as a temple for our yoga, we do open ourselves reverently to receive information that cannot be communicated in a book, and maybe not even at word. But I will attempt to do so here and share a bit of what I've learned. So this circle of spirit and crescent of soul, cross of matter, it doesn't take us too much to go from there to here, right? Sun, moon, and earth. Earth, which we say is the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit. And here is that. Yeah, so this is the chart. Especially if an equinox point is rising, we get the perfect medicine wheel, the perfect plus cross inside the circle. So I like to call the ascendant and the midheaven and the descendant and the IC, the imuncelli, the bottom of the heavens, the rise, the reach, the rest, and the roots, respectively, because that's what's happening there. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating that the sun begins its day in the 12th, right? Inclines. Why does the sun joy in the 9th? if you know about your joys. Well, how do you feel once you've summited the mountain? You know, it's exhilarating, and now the sun gets to rest and head back down. So the rise, the reach, the rest, and the roots are the 4 R's I love to speak of for the angles of the chart, where the ecliptic or the zodiac is intersected by what? The horizon, yeah, the ground, and the meridian, which is your local north-south line. And therefore, it accesses Gaia's spine, the spin axis, the axis of our daily rotation, which itself establishes the cardinal directions. And yeah, I guess I'll just throw this out there. Our tropical zodiac is directional. We often say it's seasonal. Well, it results from the same thing that the seasons result from, the directions. Yeah, it is a shamanic system. If it was seasonal, we'd have to flip the archetypes between the hemispheres, and we don't. And we've seen this is very true because it's directional. North is north everywhere on Earth, except for the North Pole where it's nowhere and the South Pole where it's everywhere. But everywhere else, north is north. All right, so what's in the middle of the meridian and the horizon? I, you, me, you know, in the birthplace. So very importantly, the cross of matter is formed horizontally by the horizon and vertically by the meridian. And the circle of spirit, well, this is where the sun lives, the ecliptic plane. So we can see in the earth glyph, we can see matter in spirit. Well, what is the sun? Or the circumpunct? Why is the sun this circle with this closed-in dot? So let's get back and look at circles again now. And I want to skip actually to a truth here. Right. Let me just say this. And these words aren't necessarily hip, right? Because we are evolving in our conscious community a little bit beyond gender identity, at least especially in the way of old role play. So I'll say feminine and masculine here and ask you if you choose to replace that with yin and yang if you prefer, or whatever it may want to be. Nocturnal and diurnal is a wonderful way to play within the realms of our sacred craft. But alchemically and in the geometrical tradition, there's a very important reason why we speak those names, and so I will here, and I hope that's okay. It's said that the curves are feminine and the lines are masculine. And the example I love to share about that, here I am in Seattle and we'll soon drive to my new home in the Bay Area, and the line says, yo, take I-5. It's like the shortest distance between 2 points because it looks a lot like that, you know? And the line is absolutely right if the whole point of the thing is going to San Francisco. But what if it's about going to San Francisco? What if it's more about the journey than the destination? Then I want to get curvy. I want to go check out the mountains and check out the coast and take my time and bring a tent and figure out where I'm going to sleep at night, you know, and meet whoever I meet along the way. And so the line does time a little bit better, at least this thing of what we think is time here, but time does this too. Anyway, it's interesting that we often speak about the sun as masculine. I mean, even in Hermes' Emerald Tablet, he says the sun is its father, and I think he's speaking about a different thing than looking at the sun as your father in your chart. I've seen that work. I've seen it not work. The sun is its father, the moon is its mother. And so people we know work this way astrologically, but what about the wind that hath carried it in its belly, and the earth who's its nurse? The Emerald Tablets are a really wonderful, amazing alchemical text that can be utilized in so many ways, and they're a principle to my own exploration right now and my own kind of cosmological approach to astrology. That version that I read, by the way, that's Isaac Newton's translation for the most part. I borrowed a couple lines from different older translations because they preserve some of the astronomical happening that Newton seemed to shift. But I just love that Isaac Newton, who I was taught is this rationalist, you know, materialist, mechanical scientist, was a full-on alchemist. I mean, at least the truth that he's translating Hermes emerald tablets would probably suggest this. All right, so if curves are feminine, well, why are we calling that masculine? You know, it's all curve. And what is that dot inside of the sun glyph? Well, very importantly, I mean, in many cultures, the sun is feminine and the moon is masculine, or in some, they're both feminine or they're both masculine. So we don't want to fall prey to that trip. In fact, I would say they're beyond that. And I think looking at the yang and the yin nature of sun and moon respectively is important. And there's many ways to pet the cosmic cat. But I will say also that there is a line here. Can you see it? And it's everywhere, you know? And we call it the radius. So just like the sun has rays, all circles have a radius, which is the only part of the circle that you can measure. What is the circumference of the circle? 2 pi r, 2 pi times the radius, the area pi r squared, yeah? But what is that? I mean, we've measured pi or calculated pi now, if you can use that word, to, I believe, over 1 billion decimal places and no end in sight and no repetition. And so mathematicians call this irrational, which I feel is a pretty patriarchal expression of the curve for the feminine. I prefer the term mysterious, but the point of the circle is one, it's endless. Every point on the edge or the circumference of the circle is the same distance from the center of source radius. And really, we could see this two-dimensional image like that in 3 dimensions, where everything on the surface of the sphere is the same distance from the center point. And it can't be measured. So in a different lecture, we would go from here and create some geometries that help us find our way to the zodiac. Maybe I can just share my screen real quick and show this image of the diurnal and nocturnal signs and the diurnal and nocturnal houses and the triplicities, and we can stop that now. But that's like a different trip than I want to take right now. Right now I want to say, what is the sun and what is the moon? What is spirit? What is soul? Why do we symbolize them in this way? And what number is that? Right? I mean, I was taught in class that that's 0, yeah? And this is the 1. And they both have an entrance to oneness, actually. But this is a little more harmonic. This shape, which really is this shape, it's rumored that the Pythagoreans called this the goddess, or the heavenly form, the perfect form, and the essence of the 1. And when you draw with a compass, one wonderful thing about the circle that I've never had a student not bring when they have drawn their circles and they come for lesson 2 and I say, what is a circle? And everyone talks about the endlessness of it. How would you describe a circle to someone who's never seen one before? And how would you describe a circle to yourself? I mean, weren't we given circle and square and rectangle and triangle all on the same day? Did we really get to play here? Wasn't I given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 all at the same time? Did I ever get to just play with the idea of the 1? What if this was the 1? Do you know that 0 is a rather new concept? Yeah, about 700 AD is when it came creeping into the West. Before then, the number system was centered around oneness. And while I'm in no way trying to claim that before those days it was all peace and love and harmony, bro, I will say just think about the importance of our calendar, of our language, of our grammar, of our numbers, of our mathematics, of our accepted physics, of our accepted currency. All of these things play a very subtle role in defining our reality, just as we don't think about breathing unless we're thinking about breathing, or controlling the way that our heart is beating unless we're tuning into that, you know. So humanity has interesting breath and heartbeat that is tuned to things like the numbers we use. And imagine the difference of beginning everything with 1 instead of beginning everything with 0, or actually centering everything around 0, because once 0 came creeping in, I mean, look at your keyboard right now. What's it say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, doesn't it? Where's the 0 on the phone pad, you know? So at first when 0 came around, they're like, okay, cool, it's amazing, but let's put it over here, because obviously you start with 1. And at some point, it crept to the beginning of the thing, you know? Well, once it's there, how do you balance 5? You need -5. How do you balance 5 if 1 is the center point? And the answer is 1/5. So I'll say that sums and differences are very different than products and what's more productive. And maybe I'll leave that there for now, but I would love for you to think of this as the image of oneness. So Hermes begins this tablet with something that we pinch from all the time as astrologers, and we say, as above, so below, right? Newton's translation, "'Tis true without lying, certain, most true, that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of one only thing." Circle, 1, spirit, sun. So spirit is a pretty subjective term, yeah? Let me share what I mean when I say this word at this point. And that is the one, the all, the undifferentiated, indivisible, endless, all that ever was, is, and will be, the one thing. Now, it would seem that here in our local space, this is held by sun. And I will tell you, I am sure that sun knows it's a star. But I also will say that a star is a lot more than what I was taught in my church called science class. And there's so much more than these weird inanimate, like nuclear furnaces. And that I believe that the sun is basically a local broadcasting center for the one, for spirit. And certainly in our solar system, I mean, I've had really wonderful elders that I've sat with before who said, you know, at midday, I'm sitting in Peru, and they say, obviously, sun is God. I mean, look, there's no life without it, right? It's like, well, you make a good case, sir, you know. But this idea of spirit and the undifferentiated, I mean, the way that the Earth and the Sun relationship plays, we end up having these 4 great stations of equinoxes and solstices, these ways that seasons work, the foundation. Why are there 12 signs? You know, and I think I actually will take a break from babbling for a second, and let me cue this up. We'll watch a quick video that will describe a greater question to that question through image and sound. Right, so we'll just let that be what it is. I would really encourage you to contemplate the circle and to draw some circles and understand that a circle is not just curve, but also line. So I'll say one more thing about the sun is this idea of the local kind of like center of spirit. Well, it's the heart of the system. We know that for sure now. It's the giver of light and life. But also, my feeling is that it holds all of the codes of all of our souls. So another subjective term, when I say soul, I mean a perfect reflection of that one thing, which is you and me. Or Bob the squirrel out here. That, as Hermes says, all things have been and arose from one by the mediation of one, so all things have their birth in this one thing by adaptation. So what is this idea of mediation, of adaptation? In geometry, I think we'd see it as a translation. And I'll show that in a second. But some of my favorite teachers I won't meet, like Alan Watts, who very much brought Eastern philosophy to the Western mind, speak of the one thing that divided itself into a gazillion pieces, you, me, whatever, so that it could witness itself. And so here on Earth, where we heal, feel, know, and grow, each to our own lot, like we're feeding the one and the evolution of the all. But I feel very importantly that one of the first definitions is that it's indivisible. So Hermes says through mediation, through adaptation. And I'll show you why I feel that this is the role of the moon. So anyway, when I look at Jupiter in the sky, I feel like I'm also engaging with every Jupiterian, whoever they are, or Mercury with the Mercurians. You know, when I look at Vega, I am also seeing all of the vegans, all of the beings who live on planets or moons around Vega. Who do they see when they look to the sun? They see you and me, and probably our ancestors and the future ones too. That the sun is holding the codes for the entire system, you see, and that's why I feel locally we can say that it is the representative of spirit and the one thing, which has not just curves, but has lines too. And so casting gender onto the sun, it's questionable, and it is the power, you see. All right, well, how do I find my way geometrically to the crescent of soul? And this is why I say it's a translation geometrically. I just take my compass and I move it a little bit and I sweep another circle of the same radius, and we get this situation, these beautiful waning, waxing crescents around the cosmic egg. And I've broken my own rule because I just divided the one, you see. So this ought to look more like this. So spirit and soul, sun and moon, circle and crescent. And I could have moved my circle here and done another one instead, or here. And really, because this is a sphere, I mean infinite amount of ways that I could create soul by taking the first circle of spirit and adapting it to become another. So it can be any of these shapes. We can even get beyond the point where the moon can ever take this form, right? Because once we wax to half, now we're going to bubble out on the other side and go gibbous and whatnot. So the only time we ever see something like this is during an eclipse. We can see the Earth's shadow on the moon surface during lunar eclipse and see something like the vesica. But this is especially evident and available to our eyes during a total solar eclipse. And it's an amazing thing. If you've never seen one, I really hope you'll go. I feel like one of the reasons why we were warned not to is simply because you receive codes of deep wordless cosmology that the priests were trying to keep locked in a box, you see. Because one thing you will notice if you watch a solar eclipse is this quickening, this strange, mysterious happening of night during day. But you'll also see with your own face that the moon is closer to Earth, and that moon and sun are the same size. What a strange thing. So in my own personal cosmology, where I feel that the sun is spirit and the moon is soul, it's wonderful to see that they are the same size. In other words, that soul is not a division of, but a perfect reflection of the all. And that soul is closer to home here on earth, which is matter. I have a feeling that if the moon weren't here, we would be like hive mind, like ants or bees, which we can't even comprehend. That one of the greatest gifts of moon on an incarnational level is twofold. One is to reflect that light of spirit, the one thing, into an absolutely unique, individual, never to be repeated expression and reflection. So the moon, you, I hope, know, will return to the same degree of the zodiac where it was when you were born every month. In fact, every 27.3 days, the moon's sidereal cycle. The moon-sun relationship, the phase, to the same exact phase angle of your birth every 29.53 days on average, the moon's synodic cycle. It's somewhat doing the phase return and the sign return simultaneously every 19 years, the metonic cycle, 235 lunations, but the moon will be smaller or bigger or lower or higher. It will never do exactly what she did at the time of your coming. And somebody who was born even 40 feet away would have a different experience, actually, if we could measure it precisely enough, of the very physical reflection of sunlight and moon's amazing glow. And she might not have even been above the horizon, right? Anyway, so we can do all sorts of things in the wane and the wax, and you get to this kind of ultimate expression of the one journeying away from itself, where the center makes it all the way to its edge, and we make this beautiful form that the geometers call the source of all creation, the vesica, piscis, the yoni. You can see the Jesus fish in there, right? There's many ways, but we can flip this thing and see the Pisces glyph. The mandorla, the sacred almond. Yeah, and so I love to say that this is in a way the full reflection of soul, like journeying as far from spirit as possible and showing spirit that spirit's also a reflection of the soul. So now I'm just sounding strange, yeah? Where is the center of this image? How would you find it? And we have to bring the lines to the circle party, right? We've got that, and we have our two center points because we swept with a compass from the center, from source, right out. And now as above, so below, swept again, you see. So I can fill now with the lines and find my way to the cross of matter. And this we use to symbolize Earth, and we use it, as you know, for Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And this isn't the Earth cross, is it? Because the Earth cross is a plus cross. So how do we limit these longer lines? And the answer is shorten your compass to half the radius and sweep again. And you make this form. Color to express a point. That here on Earth, with the human eye, we can see that spirit and soul are the same size. It's a very important piece that becomes available to us in watching the sky. And that moon and sun oddly are the same size, and here's a couple reasons why. And here's the reason why that's not true all of the time. So let's go to some prettier images and play. Before I go there, let me just kind of make the most important point of this thing. The moon, as I said earlier, but I want to say a little bit more punctuated and with my hand like this for some reason. The moon will never, ever, 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 ever reflect light like she did on the day of your coming again. Absolutely unique expression that is you and you alone. And this is true for all of the planets, and this is true for the nativity, but learn this with the moon. See this in your chart with the moon. We'll play in some ways of how dynamic the moon is. We've learned moon by what? Sign. moon by house, moon by aspect, many aspects, maybe moon, sun, moon by phase, which is really a syzygy. It's really an earth, moon, sun thing. But what about the size of your moon? What about the moon's speed? Have you considered that? And what does it mean to you? What about the moon's latitude, the declination? So let's play with some of these games now. All right, so I need to find some new buttons. This one. How did that go? Hafiz, within the circle of a perfect one, there is an infinite community of light. And before the earth itself, the planets and the spheres, I have gotten the hint. There is something about circles the beloved likes. The diamond ring. I mean, this amazing happening of a total lunar eclipse, right? Bailey's beads, you might have studied some of these phenomena, and hopefully at some point in your life, if it hasn't happened yet, or especially if it has, go to see this amazing happening. I will warn you, however, one of the reasons why we were told not to watch a total solar eclipse is because you become like a crackhead for them. I feel like I have to see everyone ever from now on. But it's an amazing happening, and we do see this celebration in this diamond ring of the alchemical wedding. So this is one of the reasons why 400, and the gig is this: the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but 400 times further away. So here on Earth, they seem to be the same size. Is this just some optical illusion, coincidence, or is there more to this? And it's not always true. But before I say why, 108 beads on the mala, 108 names of the divine goddess, 108. What else is sacred about this amazing number? 108 double stitches on a baseball. According to modern regulations, 108 square feet of grass required for each free-range chicken. There's more interesting 108s out there, but this one is so fascinating to me. The moon, on average, is 108 moon diameters from the Earth. The sun, 108 sun diameters from the Earth. The sun is 108 Earth diameters in diameter. Each of those statements is at least 97.5% true. Two of them closer to 100. The moon, 1080 miles in radius, so 2160 miles in diameter, 2160 years for one age of the great year, the precessional cycle, like the age of Pisces or the age of Aquarius. 108 is the atomic weight of silver ever associated with moon, and we can play with the sacred number in so many ways. This image coming from Joe Dubs, check out joedubs.com. It's a really amazing seeker and sharer of the mysteries. Not always 108. So this is an annular eclipse. What is that? It's the perfect syzygy. It's the perfect alignment of the three things, or what I feel that Hermes is referring to as the three parts of the philosophies, which would be matter, soul, and spirit, or earth, moon, and sun. But moon is a little bit further away, and therefore not large enough to block the entire sun from our view. We have supermoons, we say, when the moon is very close to Earth, and this some now are calling the micromoon, when the moon is further away, and therefore we have an annular eclipse, a strong enough eclipse to be total, but close enough to the nodes, and we'll look at that a bit, but the moon further away from us, yeah? And this is a thing. Do you know about this on your chart? Yeah, no orbit, though Hafiz is right about the beloved having a thing for circles. The orbits don't, right? The orbits are elliptical. And this is a very exaggerated image, as most of these are, to get the point across. In an elliptical orbit, there is not one center of gravity, but two for the two bodies. Now, The moon is incredibly large for a moon. About a quarter the size of the Earth. The proper dimension actually is 3/11 the size of the Earth, which opens all sorts of number magic we won't play with today. But the moon in its greater size, in its smaller size, finds one of the foci of this orbital dance within the realm of Earth, pretty close to the circumference. But the other is this empty focus, it's called, and this is Black Moon, which somehow got associated with Lilith mythically, right? And very importantly, if we look from Earth through the empty focus, we're looking at the point in the moon's elliptical orbit of the Earth, if we want to model it that way, at what's called the lunar apogee. So as far from Earth as the moon gets, yeah? Whereas the closest approach to the Earth in the moon's monthly orbit is the perigee, right? So perigee close, apogee far, G Earth, all right? So Black Moon Lilith is really here, but we can see that same point of the zodiac at the moon's apogee. And in some senses, it might be more informative to think of Black Moon Lilith, if you've looked at this point in the chart, as far Moon Lilith, which means small Moon Lilith, which means slow Moon Lilith. You did? Whereas the opposite point, and some of the folks in like the Dutch and German schools who are playing with what they call metaphysical luminaries, like Black Moon Lilith now, speak of the other point as Priapus. But it will always be opposite Lilith on the chart. People ask me, do I look at mean Lilith or true Lilith? And I like to respond in the same question regarding the nodes. I'm trying to speak the truth and I'm trying not to be mean, okay? But they both have their amazing places, especially the means when working with long cycles and research. But I'm more interested personally in the true nodes and the true Lilith, because we can measure that now. So check out your chart and check out how far Moon was from Earth when you were born. So let me see a couple things. All right. Solar eclipse, right? So in a solar eclipse, you have to be within the umbra because the moon is much smaller than the Earth. The moon does not block the entire sun from all of the day side of Earth's point of view, right? Play this game with the lamp and something to project a small shadow onto. It's a cool experiment. And see what happens when you bring the moon further and closer and the Earth further and closer. So if the moon is a certain distance and you're in the right place, you get the full diamond ring. Here's an image of a very long total solar eclipse, July 21st, 2009. Moon and sun very close to the node, and we'll wrap more about nodes. But also you see how they're opposite Lilith. So near Priapus, and that means super moon. So big moon, close moon, fast moon, but enough to block the entire sun, and even more of it than some total solar eclipses, so longer. Whereas here you see a very long annular solar eclipse, very close to the nodes, less than this. But the moon here, very close to Lilith, you see. And so this is a small moon, and therefore not large enough to block out the entire sun. Small moon, far moon, dim moon, small moon. The Earth has aphelions and perihelions, helios closer, far close to perihelion, far from aphelion, the sun. If the sun moved at the rate through the zodiac, which of course is actually the Earth moving through the zodiac, the same rate that it does in early January when it's closest, then our year would be 12 days shorter, or 12 days longer in July. This plays part of why we can have a triple eclipse like we are in the midst of right now. And we could speak about that in Q&A a bit if you want. I kind of want to cruise along. But I will show that these are, I think, all of the triple eclipse seasons since 1950 through 2070 marked by the date of the total lunar eclipse between two partial solar eclipses, including July 27th, 2018 down here. L means they were close to Lilith. The star means very close to the nodes, double stars, exceptionally close. I put this together because I was working on this theory that the triple solar eclipse could only happen when the total lunar eclipse was close to Lilith. And play with that a little. All right, so 2018 eclipses, and we had total lunar, partial solar, and then this partial solar, total lunar, partial solar all in one season. Next year, we also have 3 solar eclipses, but it's simply because we begin our years on this January 1st date, and we have a partial solar eclipse on January 6th. The eclipse year is shorter than the tropical year, 354 days. And so we're going to have basically opening into the 3rd eclipse season within 1 year. But very interestingly about 2019, you can see in January there's a partial solar eclipse. In July, there's a total solar eclipse. And in December, there's an annular solar eclipse. So all of the possibilities that really come from this and this, but also from the nodes. So one thing I would encourage you to play with is, you're like, what is the size and the speed and this of the moon? This was the chart from when I presented a couple of weeks ago for Nightlight, the recording that was deleted. And if any of you were there, you already saw that while we're talking about the same things, the flow has been very different. So anyway, on that date, July 31st, moon was here in Pisces and pretty close to Lilith, right? Separating from Lilith, as we know, the secondary motion is this way through the natural order of the zodiac. So Pisces will become Aries and Taurus, and of course, moon and sun never retrograde. So this is a moon that's not so big. It's on the Lilith side of the zone, you see, but it's also getting bigger, which means getting faster, getting closer. Let's look at the chart for this moment right now, and I'll bring in Intrepid software. So this is this moment now, Seattle, Washington, 5:12:22 p.m., the galactic center on the rise. And moon very close to the amazing goddess star Spica, and just culminating at the reach 25 degrees, 8 minutes, Libra. This is a strange, although somewhat appropriate glyph for Lilith in this software, which is currently true black moon Lilith at 26.5 degrees Capricorn. So the moon is on the square to Lilith, I mean, almost perfectly, right? So what does that mean? I mean, that's a moon at average size, because average distance from the Earth, and therefore average speed in these types of things as well. Now the sun plays into this. So when the sun is aligned to the Lilith axis, let me get back to that image, it will stretch the eclipse. So if sun's at Lilith or opposite Lilith in the chart, then the moon, super moon, will be even super-er, and the micro moon even micro-er, right? Because this eclipse will get stretched. If the sun is here, it becomes more circular. The sun is on the square. It's another thing that's feeding into the triple eclipse. All right, so have you played with this in your chart at all? We say that the moon moves what? 13 degrees a day. This is one of the ways that this great number 13 comes into these mysteries. But that's not usually the case. And certainly in this case, the moon is going to be moving slower than 13 degrees a day, which is an average because this is a far moon and therefore a slow moon. Hopefully that makes sense. Far moon, small moon, dim moon, slow moon. Okay, well now let's play quickly, just cosmologically. Let me see. Yeah, I'll just wrap with you for a second. What does that mean? What does it mean if your moon is far or close? And this is where you need to have a feeling for you of what is the Earth and what is the moon. So you've heard my rap that the Earth is matter and the moon is soul, a perfect reflection of all that is spirit, symbolized by sun. I'm not telling you to adopt that. And I literally, hello fly, I literally might change my mind like this evening. I feel like I'm starting to right now. How can we know these things, but have some kind of cosmological connection to this? Is moon simply instincts? Moon emotional needs? Memories? Mother? Well, I mean, don't all of those speak about where I'm coming from? I came from my mother. And I always follow that with, I'm not so sure about my father sometime, but it would have been hard for mom to fake the thing, wouldn't it? You know? What are emotional needs, given the truth that babies have them and instincts too? And maybe memories, you know? What is that? It all seems to tickle this idea of lineage. So what is that? I mean, are we speaking about culmination of past lives, of traits handed down through the ancestors, of simple genetic predisposition? How can I know? But certainly that's something that we come here with. We come here, shamanically speaking, with medicine for the world. We might have to remember it. We might have to have a bit of a soul retrieval, but I find this symbolized in the moon. Now, many people these days, as we know, are working with the South Lunar Node to speak about where we're coming from, and I think we'll get to that. But I see that in the moon herself. I was taught this in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School where I got my start with Daniel Jamario. And I've been pursuing why, because I've always seen it work. So Daniel will speak about the moon as the PhD of your soul that you come in with. And I just like to say it's the medicine that you bring to help us evolve, you know, as the one. And sometimes it's over honored, sometimes it's not honored at all, and we have to take it back. Either way, we have to take it back in its purity. Well, what if moon's far away? Yeah. I mean, is this a soul that doesn't want to come to Earth, you know, that wants to stay out in the realms of spirit? Is this part of the Lilith story? I mean, the Lilith story, which is tricky and patriarchal and shadowy and kind of gross. And yet also, if we can play with that, not literally, yeah, but play with that and some ideas of what is this being who chose to leave the garden, who didn't want to be here, who certainly did not want to be told what to do or spend some time with some dude that she wasn't cool with or whatever, you know, and then became this like consumer of souls. If you read those old writings, it's a pretty crazy thing, you know. Like be a little careful here, but one of the things about Lilith, it said that she ate these babies, like the miscarriages. That's like Lilith's territory. And one of the deals she made to not have to be forced back into this garden was that 100 babies that were hers to claim she would give, and they would be born every day. Now, what is this? You know, what is this idea of some kind of goddess or energy who would, you know, keep babies from incarnating? Well, isn't that something that's saying it doesn't want to come play the Earth game? And why? Maybe because we want to stay connected to knowing that we are the one. I mean, I feel that one of the moon's great gigs, besides reflecting spirit into this unique personal expression of that reflection, is to marry that to the art of forgetting. Because if you knew what you truly were, you would never do you, you know? That's like one of the great ways of the Earth game, is if you knew wherever you were coming from, which probably is the undifferentiated oneness of source, then you couldn't really have your life and know and grow and heal and feel accordingly to your own choices. So I like to think of Lilith in this mythos in that regard. And I love to think of moon's size and speed in this way as a soul really excited to come to Earth. And I wonder, I haven't done the research at all, but I'd be really interested in knowing if there's any correlation between labor time and ease of labor and the size or speed of the moon. But all I can offer you is check it out and have your own thoughts about it. So how fast is your moon? How far is your moon? And just look at the phase angle to Lilith. If it's closer to Lilith and the square on either side, then it's slower, further. And if it's further, if it's on the other side, especially opposite Lilith, then closest, fastest, brightest, biggest. So I can only invite you to explore that, right? If I had to suggest what it was, I've already, I guess, done that. You have to have a feeling of what is moon and what is earth. And so then what is a far moon or a close moon? Okay, back to the show. Hey, what's that? Okay, hopefully everyone's seeing that. Why are there all of these dragons and serpents with the moon and sun imagery? This one coming from the Ripley Scroll. Famous alchemical text here from Kircher. The dragon that eats the moon. The dragon that eats the sun. Rahu consuming the sun. I hate to tell a story about a story, but for the sake of time, I will just say to achieve the elixir of immortality, the sacred Amrit, the Devas had to team with the Asuras, light forces and shadow forces, to churn the milk ocean on the fifth plane, and the great serpent Vasuki lent itself as the churning rope, and Mount Meru as the pole, and Vishnu incarnated as Korma, this great tortoise, to put that mountain on its back when everything started churning. The first thing they brought up was poison, of course, seeking immortality. But you know, this image looks a lot like this image to me. Shadow on one side, light on the other, turning the thing. What churns Earth's oceans but sun and moon, you know? Anyway, they were successful. They achieved the Amrit, and then Vishnu took the form of the beautiful enchantress Mohini to play this trick, because they did not want the Asuras, the demons, to have immortality. So they gave the goods to the Devas, and they gave some substitute to the Asuras. But one of the Asuras, not because he saw that this was going down, but because he had a thing for the light, went and sat between Surya, the sun, and Chandra, the moon, who had just been born in this churning. And his cup was filled, and he sipped, and just then his neighbors ratted him out. So Mohini, who is Vishnu, threw this chakra that decapitated this being Rahu, and he didn't die, because he had already sipped the elixir of immortality, and so now he became two endless immortal beings: Rahu, the head of the serpent, and Ketu, the serpent's tail. These lunar nodes, which oddly enough aren't, really devised of circle and crescent and cross like the other glyphs we use, right? Here's Mercury, thrice great, who has all three parts of the philosophy, as he tells us. This is where the nodes comes from, right? The head of the king cobra. But you can also put them together, and you can see that slithering of the snake, and you can actually see these moons and suns, and this is what the nodes are, right? So a heliocentric model, Earth orbiting the sun, moon orbiting Earth, which is a model that works. And Rahu and Ketu are the places, the lunar nodes, where the path of the moon from Earth's point of view crosses the path of the sun. From Earth's point of view, it's a little bit easier to see it this way as we draw on our charts, which are geocentric. Why? Because we are geocentric. We are Earth beings primarily concerned with the happenings on Earth. So the ascending node is where the moon ascends from below the ecliptic plane, which is the sun's path, right? Let's just go back here for a second. What is the ecliptic? It is the plane of Earth's orbit about sun. So from Earth's point of view, suns dance about Earth. If we extend that circle, which I call the circle of spirit, and I think now you know why, if we extend that out towards infinity, we encounter the 12 constellations of the zodiac. So from Earth's point of view, the sun is always held by one of those 12 star groups. And the moon's plane and the sun's plane are not parallel. So they cross in 2 points. Now where the moon ascends from below the sun's path from Earth's point of view to above is the ascending node, and where it comes back down, the descending node. So why are we saying, like evolutionary astrology, that the south node is where we come from? That's a pretty new concept, by the way. Kind of like Roger, Mark Edmund Jones, who started looking at the nodes in this modern sense of paths of fate. Well, in my own cosmology, I just spoke about moon as soul and sun as spirit. So when the moon is coming down past, spirit down to earth, that certainly carries a lot of imagery of incarnation, doesn't it? And what about when the moon on the other side is going back up, right? And every month it's like this. The moon snakes about the path of the sun from our point of view, right? Ascending to the heavens, and then what does he say? It descends again, achieving the forces of things superior, which means above, and inferior, which means below, not better than and worse than. So this is one way that we can apply the Hermes Emerald tablets to the heavenly happenings. So we can see this kind of ascent of the soul back to the heavens, or descent of the soul down to earth, So the ascending and descending node, it really seems to make sense with that idea of this is where I'm coming from, this is where I'm going to. Now the issue is that in the southern hemisphere, the ecliptic is flipped. The zodiac is flipped. If you've been down there, or if you've been up to the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere, you've noticed that. When I go down and teach in the southern hemisphere, I'm often like bending over backwards and looking at the ecliptic so I can see the constellations the way that I'm used to experiencing and orienting myself. And then I'm cool to see it flipped over. So the point of the thing is the south node in the northern hemisphere is where the moon comes from above to below. But in the southern hemisphere, that's where the moon is going back up. So should we flip our idea of what they mean on the soul path between hemispheres? There's a fly joining us. I hope you've noticed. And I think the answer is no, and let me show you why. But let's also just speak about this in regards to charts. So let me share a screen here again, and we'll pop into Intrepid. And so let's look just at sun, moon, I think I'll leave Lilith in there, and then the lunar nodes, right? So what is the moon doing by latitude here? Can you see that? Can you see it in your chart, right? So there'll be a place where the moon is north and going north. I'll do this from the northern hemisphere's point of view, north and going north, or north above the plane and coming back down to the south, crossing south at the southern node, or south and going south, or south and coming back north. And so we would speak about the squares to the nodes, which traditionally are known as if this is north node, the northern bending, south node, southern bending, where the moon maxes out in its furthest place above or below the path of the sun. Let's look at this same chart in another view, because here we see the moon approaching the northern bending. Yeah, north node in Leo, south node in Aquarius. And so the northern bending zodiacally ahead of the north node in square will be 5 degrees 47 minutes tropical Scorpio. And so the moon from the northern hemisphere's point of view is going to be well above the ecliptic path right now. So let's go to Stellarium software, one of my favorite places to play. And I really recommend the software. It's free. The spelling Stellarium.org, free for Mac and PC. This is the same moment right now, right? So let me make sure we're nowish. 0 Capricorn, tropical rising, 1st degree of Scorpio, 2nd degree of Scorpio, culminating, moon very close to the top of the chart. And we see that here. And look at how high above the ecliptic plane the moon is right now. There's the moon sun path You know, this is an interesting thing to see if I take the ground away and we get to see that image of, whoa, how did we create the crescent of Sol in the first place? But we drew two circles, right? See that there? In the moon and sun. So this is moon at northern latitude. And I'll show you the same thing. It looks like this actually, this isn't Seattle, this is Sedona. I just reset my location there because I was hanging there for a bit. But let's go down to anywhere in the southern hemisphere. I'm just going to go kind of same time zone down here. And we'll look to the culmination, which is in the northern side of the sky. And here's moon, closer to Earth than the ecliptic plane, yeah? So very important, I think, to understand that difference between the tale of two hemispheres. But now there's something that's very similar. And let me, we will hop back over here. All right. Why? And this is where I would go with this. I'm going to skip around a bit. Somewhere, yes, okay. Apex of the sun's way. So this is this amazing thing that I learned last September, and it was like one of the most important eureka moments I had. It's like, all right, so much of our astrodynamics and our astrological basis, even in modern times, was based on a fixed sun, that the sun isn't moving. Well, it is. And where is it going? I asked, and I found out our sun is moving towards the star Vega. And we've known about this for hundreds of years. And the reason why is just like the road in front of you when you're driving opens up, so the stars around Vega are slowly, very slowly spreading apart from one another. While on the opposite side of the sky, Sirius, the stars around Sirius are slowly collapsing towards one another, just like the road behind you when you're driving is coming together, you see. So we know that we are heading towards Vega, right? And that's why. Why is the Earth heading towards Vega? Because the sun is moving towards Vega, so the whole system is, yeah? So what? Well, Vega never sets at Earth's North Pole, where Sirius never rises. Sirius never sets at Earth's South Pole, where Vega never rises. In other words, we are moving north. So, moral of the story is that regardless of whether you are in the northern hemisphere where the north node is going towards the heavenly zone, or in the southern hemisphere where the north node is coming back down to Earth, when we witness a planet crossing the ecliptic moving north, it is literally moving towards the future. And when we witness a planet moving at the south node towards southern latitudes, it is literally moving towards the past. So it is not in any way defying nature or in any way just some symbolic thing to say that a north planetary node, including the lunar north node, is future and the south node is past. Okay? So I'm still personally more connected to the moon itself as this place of what we're bringing in with us as literally soul. But the south node speaks to this in so many ways also. And I'm never going to be one of these beings, I hope, that says get out of the past and move towards the future. Like, we want to grow in both directions. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. And this is true for our craft. So, you know, praises to the folks who are doing the translations of the old, you know, the hindsight and the traditional astrologers, and praises to the folks who are bringing that old information and reinvigorating it for the current consciousness and applying it in a healing way, in a new way. Because if you look back far enough, you're going to find a lot of dead ends and a lot of question marks anyway. Why? Because our craft was preserved for the initiates, and it's not something you could speak about, right? So when you look back at these ancient texts, You see a lot of, I don't know, I mean, Hermes was saying, and of course it's not written that way, but that's the feel I get because so much of it was preserved for the magical tradition, you see? And that's important for us too. And so much of it's never going to come to us through books, right? Lines. Like we have to make sure that we're open to our curve side. So I was very excited to go at UAC recently to a lunar latitude talk, a Mesopotamian lunar latitude. And I was like, fuck yeah, like sweet. And then what did they say? Oh, north going north. Amazing. North going south. Okay. South going south. Oh, and terrible. How could you even live? That's where I have in my chart. And then south coming back to the north. At least it's getting better. Right? So often we look to the old ways and it's like, this is good, this is bad, this is dignified, this is debilitated. And it's like, how as a healer do I use that? Right? And it can be, we can utilize that type of astrology in profound and powerful ways. So we don't want to just throw it away. But how do we realign this? So I'll say this, look at your lunar latitude simply by your moon's phase to the nodes, right? So I'm going to go northern hemisphere and say that the north node is the ascending node and the northern bending is the highest peak of the moon above the sun's plane, the ecliptic, which is about 5 degrees and 17 minutes of latitude, by the way. We don't see it on a chart, right? We just see a circle. But the moon's actually doing this about that circle of spirit, which is the circumference of our nativity. So northern bending, or dragon's back, dragon's tail, south node, dragon's belly, the southern bending. Okay. So if your north node is Gemini, where's the south node? Sag. Where's the northern bending? Virgo. And the southern bending's in Pisces, right? It will always be square. So just think of your quadruplicities and the modalities, right? And let's say you have north node in Scorpio and the moon is in Capricorn. So the moon is now ahead of the north node. If the north node Scorpio, where's the northern bending? Scorpio, Taurus, the answer is Aquarius, right? So the Capricorn moon would be north going north. Yeah? So if you're in the northern hemisphere, I would say in one sense, what is that? How could I delineate that? Well, soul is like moving towards the heavens. And for the northern hemisphere, if we use that example further, a Capricorn moon, Capricorn is the lowest altitude sign of the northern hemisphere. So here I'm taking that Capricorn moon and I'm pushing it up in places the sun could never go. You see, that moon's going to be out of bounds, by the way. But what if that's southern hemisphere? Now it's taking a very high sign, Capricorn, and grounding it down to earth. But either way, I could say this, that it's a futuristic moon, right? It's taking those Capricorn mysteries and saying, I'm going to bring in the new vision of Capricorn. Or what if it's the other way? What if, let's say, the south node is Sagittarius and it's this Capricorn moon, right? So now it's a south latitude moon heading south because the southern bending, if the south node's Sag, the southern bending would be Pisces, right? North node Gemini. So here's that Capricorn moon heading down towards the past. Or maybe in the southern hemisphere, heading up to the past. And that's a trip. I hope that's okay, that you're playing with that and open to receiving that. But either way, this past idea, what are the roots of the Capricorn mystery school? How did the elders used to do it? What is the deep trunk of the tree? Yeah. So what about now I've connected to my roots and I'm bringing it back up, right, to the plane of spirit. So there's one way I could think of this as like very futuristic, and at some point it's like, no, I got to come back to the present and bringing the new visions back, going to seek the old ways and then bringing the old ways back. So that's one way that I'm currently playing with lunar latitude, because this is good, this is better, this is terrible, and here, why did you even choose to live? Like, don't work for me as a counselor and a healer. All right, so I wanted to speak about declination too, but the alien alarm just rang, and I think maybe what we should do instead is get into questions, and if there's time, we'll go into that aspect. So just before we do, in review, what is the sun? What is the moon? What is the earth? That's up to you, but please have a journey. Please go see for yourself. Please go find out, and don't, believe your teacher. And thank you, Adam, for having me on. It's an incredible honor to be here. Absolutely. But also go seek. And these are the questions that can only be answered by greater questions. Expectation is the enemy of surprise. Surprise is the portal to experience, and experience is the sound of knowing. So choosing to know that you can't know these things actually opens the window for the greater questions to come in that will lead you to a faith and feeling your own way of these things. And I really recommend playing with some of these toys, and especially being out in the sky. If you want to ask the moon about what a close, bright, fast moon is, go ask the close, bright, fast moon. And if that doesn't sound weird to you, I will also just share my personal practice, which is, hi moon, I'm Brett. Amazing to see you again. Seen you my whole life, but I'm seeing you in different ways now, and I would love to see more of you. I give myself to you tonight. Will you please give me some of your light? Will you please be my teacher? And then, though I have a couple times in my strange life actually experienced planets speaking in English, I do not in any way expect the moon or Jupiter or Venus or whatever to do so, right? So, so maybe she's going to show up in the dreams. Maybe she'll send some human beings, who's to say? All right, let me share my screen one more time and just show you a few things that I'm up to recently. Because if you dig this, I'd love for you to come over and check out some of the stuff. I just put up, there's 7 videos now of different transmissions about the triple eclipse, and I spoke a bunch there about eclipse astronomy. It's amazing, time flew a little bit more, I guess, here in me doing cosmological cartwheels at the beginning, because I shared more in the first session. But some of the things that I was really excited to share today that didn't come across, you can find in this triple eclipse presentation I gave for EA Zoom meetings recently, or in this, the Astronomy of Shadow Play is one I would encourage you to check out. So you can just on YouTube search Gemini Brett and one word Eclipse Shadow Play, and it will bring you to this playlist. This is my website, morethan.astrology.com, and my email is morethan.astrology@gmail.com if you'd like to reach out. A couple of things you'll find here is this services if you want to book a journey through your own soul song. And then also this Sacred Astronomy web course link. Hopefully I have that. Yeah, I am currently creating an online curriculum of astronomy for astrologers, and not doing it just in geek science guy way, but with a lot of different embodiment exercises, building medicine wheels to learn the directions, and just finding ways through a lot of animations to express some of these things that are hard to say in words so you can see them. I taught this course live and it was great. We had like 100 students, and but now I'm creating an online curriculum, and you can play with the first 12 lessons for free. The easiest way to do that is go to morethan.astrology.com/free and type in your email, and I'll send you a bunch of free stuff, including links here. But if you go to the /sacred astro page, you should find your way to the 12 free sessions. You'll only be able to play with the first one for free because the password to the second is the answer to the first one's test question. So it's like a online mystery school built by a kid who played too many video games. I hope you go check it out. And in person, I'm teaching a 3-day Astronomy for Astrologers intensive at the iAstrologer retreat, Organization for Professional Astrology's retreat this October. The first bit of iAstrologer, which is October 4th through the 7th, is helping astrologers choose to be professional astrologers, because we need more, and helping professional astrologers further the professionalism of their astrology and how we share and create websites. And so check it out at opaastrology.org. The second part of the session, which is October 8th through the 10th, there's few options, and one of them is to do Astronomy for Astrology with me. We'll be in the classroom playing with animations. We'll be out in the field building medicine wheels and sundials, but we'll also be like deeply engaged with the night sky intimately. All of the visible planets will be visible. Venus, we will probably see her heliacal set. In January, I'll be doing a retreat with Maurice Fernandez, owner Doser, and we have some guests, Claudia Stalker and Nadia Shah are going to come do some presentations as well. And there'll be a Mayan shaman on site. We're going to take a trip to the Uxmal Pyramid of the Magician, but we're going to be on this bio retreat island where it's super dark skies, and 3 astrologers who are coming from pretty different places. And we're going to make it very experiential. If you've ever seen Maurice or studied with him, he teaches Kundalini, every morning, early in the morning. And I'll be doing night sky stuff at night. And Owner's a brilliant traditional astrologer from Turkey. All right, so enough of that, and I will check the chat. Adam, if you want to tune in, it's 5:45. I've got a bunch of tea here and I'm happy to keep cruising, but if you want to cut this off, just let me know. All right, so where's the chat box button? Here we go. Oh, okay, we're back to tuning my guitar to 444. That's an amazing thing. In my last talk, I referenced a book on calendaring and I didn't catch the name or the author. Yeah, okay, so it was most likely this book, which is so amazing. It's called The Mayan and Other Ancient Calendars by Jeff Stray, G-O-F-F Stray. One of those little wooden books. It's amazing. Those things are always tricky to read. They're like riddles, and there's many levels to them. There's another wooden book I know I mentioned last time and really highly recommend people to play with, which is called Earth, Sun, and Moon by Robin Heath. So there's 2 really fun recommendations. Spencer linking cymatic videos. They're so super cool. Love reserving the right to change our minds. Good. Will I talk about Spica? Well, Spica is an amazing star. It's known in the tradition as one of Hermes' Bohemian stars, one of the magical stars. Has its own glyph, Today, in our day and age, projects to 24 degrees tropical Libra, as does the star Arcturus. But that, if you go see Spica and Arcturus in the sky and you learn to see the ecliptic, and a wonderful way to play with those 2 today is just go out after sunset and curve your arm between Venus and Jupiter. All right, and in between the 2 of them, Venus and Libra, Jupiter and Scorpio, you will find your way to this sapphire, this amazing star, and this is Spica. And then way up there, if you're in the northern hemisphere, or way down there, maybe not even visible if you're in the southern hemisphere, is Arcturus. And even in that investigation, you will learn latitude. And you'll actually get some of this really wonderful question of what does the zodiac open up for you? Because how could this star here and this star up there and this star so close to the ecliptic, the zodiac, and one star way up there both be 24 Libra? And they're both Bohemian stars, by the way. So will I talk about Spica? I mean, I invite you to go talk with Spica. I mean, I will say that, you know, in the Greco-Roman tradition, she's drawn as the shaft of wheat that the priestess of the heavens holds, the alpha star of the constellation Virgo. In some of the native traditions, it's said that Spica represents an ear of corn held by a squaw. I've been told second or maybe third hand that in Bali there's a tradition where one of the incarnations of Kuan Yin became a heavenly constellation, and that Spica is this rice paddy that she holds. So how now in 3 places around the globe could this star carry the same resonance of an agricultural gift handed to us from the heavens by a goddess? And the only answers I can come to are that we're all coming, they are all rooted in the same civilization, and we can play the wonderful song called Atlantis, or that there were teachers from one place that traveled the world, educating people in their own mythology and language about what the heavens do, or that's just what Spica is. So I'd rather personally, instead of sharing all that, though I just did, say go meet Spica and ask Spica what she is. I think a really wonderful way to do that too is, will you tell me your name? These stars have many names, and they probably have a name for you. That's not what's written in the books. But if you have things around 24 Libra, tropical, you have alignments to Spica and projected to Arcturus. If you have anything 24 cardinal, there's squares or an opposition to Spica, right? 24 Gemini, 24 Aquarius, you're on trines to that star. So it's really cool to learn these fixed stars and see them in the zodiac, to see how your planets, or the planets where they were when you came in, aspect these powerful stars. Caught the Earth, Sun, and Moon book. It's fantastic. Thank you. Right on. Kind of new to astrology, but I heard that the moon sometimes describes her personality during childhood. Is that real? Yeah, I've heard that true. Some people will say, I mean, for me, literally, the moon is where we're coming from in all regards. I always go back there. The first sessions I have, well, oftentimes the first sessions I have with people, I'm just checking in to see how much they're feeding their moon. Because we've really been turned on to sun sign astrology. Part of that was probably dependent upon the Copernican revolution and the sun-centered idea of the cosmos. But I mean, the sun was always this giver of light and life. I mean, I call myself Gemini Brett, right? And I'm a Scorpio. If I was going to say that A thing, I don't like to, because there's so many notes of a soul song. All these planets might be reflecting sun's light, yeah. So I have a Gemini moon, and Gemini was on the rise, and I was born as well. And I was born at night, so traditionally the moon is my sect light. So for me, so much is coming from the moon. So are you in child? I mean, when I do sessions with parents who have recently had babies, my focus is entirely on the moon. When I'm speaking with adults, a lot of my focus is on the moon, because we've been kind of programmed to do our sun sign. And most of our first approach to astrology is, you know, sun sign astrology, first exposure to it. So I've known I was a Scorpio my whole life. It wasn't until I was 37 years old that I also found out I'm a Gemini, and a Libra, and a Virgo, and a Cancer, and Leo, and, you know, all these beings. I just want to say another thing about feeding the moon. Gurdjieff said that we are food for the moon in Beelzebub's tales. It's an interesting trip, but the way that I've translated it, or with some assistance, is that at the end of this life, it's less of like a judgment thing than it is like a processing time of moon literally serving this function of consuming all the leftover energy that you didn't expend or that you suppressed or whatever, right? We tend to do that pretty well in this culture. And I'm fond of saying you can serve the suppressed to control you, or you can control the expressed to serve you. Yeah, it's good Scorpio medicine. So there's a practice I have that I call feeding the moon. And whether I can see her at night or not, before the light goes off at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of looking at what happened today, being in that pleasure, that pain, the stress, whatever it may be, and at least envisioning the moon and sending that her way for feed the moon, like every night, you know. And what does the moon do but receive and reflect? And so how's that going to come in for me? Probably in a dream that says, okay, cool, this is how you can shift your perception so that that type of experience doesn't trigger the reaction it did today, and you can be more centered and present, whatever. So when I'm in my practice, that's one of the things that I try to do like daily. And the idea is if I'm feeding the moon consistently, then the processing time at the end, if there's any truth to this, will be shorter lived. Oh, thanks, Alice. That's really nice to hear. Hi, everyone. Don't forget to donate. Oh, thanks, Adam. That's not a question. Food for the moon because we reflect back when we are attentive, perhaps. And the type of we ate attentive fun. I'm always arguing with my Gurdjieffian friend about this. Yeah, it's a really fun thing. I mean, so many of these spiritual masters speak in like strange cryptic poetry, you know, and some of them say things that are very challenging for us. All right, so total solar eclipse equals new moon close or far. Right, so let's see if I can play with models. Total solar eclipse, right? Well, seriously, total solar eclipse. You're the Earth, here's the moon, and that's the sun, right? Can I do it the other way? No, I can't. My bad. Small moon. Okay, so if the moon is far from you, it's smaller. So here would be the total solar eclipse, right? So like a super moon, moon opposite Lilith, or really anywhere in that zone. And then here's like a micro moon that's not going to eclipse the entire sun. And this is why, in a sense, for this recorded bit, it's a shame I didn't get to the nodes in some of these slides. I might actually just flash them really quickly so they're on the recording, and you could pause the screen and do with them what you wish later on. And it's just about the moon's proximity to the nodes. And again, that EA Zoom meeting, which you can find on YouTube by searching Gemini Brett, one word, eclipse shadow play, and looking at the eclipse astronomy will lead you into a more metered presentation of this information. But I'll just leave this here. I will say also that I found in charts that this top line is not necessarily true, which is that if a new moon is within 18.5 degrees of either north or south lunar node, the solar eclipse will be total or annular. So why can it be annular? Because the moon is further from the Earth. So that doesn't really have to do with the new moon's proximity to the nodes. That has to do with the moon's proximity to what we call Lilith, right, or the apogee. But these rules are what are transmitted in a lot of books, and they're really fascinating to me because if you look at that 18.5 degrees, well, 18 and 19 are moon and sun numbers. So I'm going to show you this for lunar eclipses as well. When the full moon is within 12.25 degrees of either node, we get a eclipse, and when it's within 3.5 total, there's a window where it might be total, and this depends on the size of the moon and the size of the sun, and that's all about these distances. And that's between 3.5 and 6 from either node, and then between 6 and 12.25, it's going to be a partial eclipse. Yeah. I'm just going to leave this here too, which is something I've been working on, and that will at least plant a seed that maybe we could speak about some other time. All right, buttons. Hopefully I was sharing my screen during all of that. Not seeing your screen, says Lisa. No. Rookie. I'm so used to Zoom video now. And actually, I don't even see where my share screen button is. Oh, here. Sorry. Let me do that again then. Okay, here's some of these rules that I found are and are not real. There. And hopefully you can see all of this. But solar eclipse within 18.5 degrees, if the new moon is within 18.5 degrees of either north or south node, a solar eclipse will occur. I've seen 17.5 where it wasn't an eclipse, so that is up for debate. One thing that's incredible about that is the 18 and 19 correlation of moon and sun, and so I'll actually share that since I made the rookie mistake. We'll do it like a veteran this time. So here's just a thing you can review, and there's this range here of between 10 degrees and 11.25 degrees where it might be total or annular, or it might be partial. And the reason is that the moon might be closer to Earth or further from Earth, and the sun might be closer to or further from Earth too. And I would love for you just to take that without having answers, to take that as a question to go play with and like play with some models and see how that comes alive for you. And again, so Gemini Brett Eclipse Shadow Play on YouTube, and you can get to that Astronomy of Eclipses. So here's the lunar situation. Now, the lunar situation is different, right? We were looking at a solar eclipse side before. Here's a lunar eclipse side. Well, the Earth is much larger than moon in nature, and so Earth's shadow encompasses the entire moon. So if there's a total lunar eclipse anywhere where it's night and the clouds allow, you will be witnessing the eclipse, right? It's different than a solar eclipse where you have to be on the shadow path. Even if it's daytime, you're not always going to see a solar eclipse, even if it's total. So here's the conditions for moon and sun. Now, there's an amazing things about 12s and 13s with moon and sun. For example, there's 12.368 new moons a year, or at least lunations a year. So if we start with first quarter, there'll be that many first quarters. Where there's like 13.368 sidereal moons a year, moon orbiting the zodiac. Okay, so the 12 and the 13s with moon and sun, it's an amazing thing. And I just love that the eclipse numbers for the lunar eclipse are around, it's focused on this 12ness, 12.25. And again, in this middle, there's a range where it might be total or it might be partial, and that has mostly to do with the size of moon. Okay. So let's see this thing, right? In the tarot, 18 is the card of the moon and 19 is the card of the sun. So this amazes me to see that the solar eclipse phenomena, at least suggested on what most books will say, is that when a new moon meets within 18.5 degrees of either node. Well, what's 18.5? It's right between the moon card and the sun card. What else is 18.5? How about the nodal transit, right? The lunar nodes, which move retrograde, and exploring astronomically why they move retrograde and applying your own cosmology, by the way, is an endless and amazing journey that I highly suggest. 18.5 years for the nodes to retrograde their way around the entire zodiac. It's really 18.618 years, which is a fascinating thing if you played with sacred geometry and the golden number, and 1.618 and yada yada yada. Okay, so the nodes live between the moon and the sun card. Doesn't that make sense, since the nodes are where the moon and the sun are one? Also, the stereocycles of eclipses, 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. on average because they're 225 lunations, but an eclipse of a family, its heartbeat is 18.03 years, about 18, right? There's the moon card. 19 is the Metonic. So we have not 12 lunations a year. We don't have 13. It's closer to 12. It's 12.368. Every 3 years, we have about 37 lunations. Okay, 12, 12, 12, and the 1/3 additional each year becomes 1 over 3 years. But it's not exact. Where it gets very exact is every 19 solar years. We have almost exactly 235 lunations. The Saros is 223 lunations. The Metonic, named for the Greek meton, even though it's seriously coded into the pyramids and Stonehenge and was well known in Babylonian all over the place, the Metonic is 19 years. So if you cast your solar return chart at 19, 38, 57, 76, the 19s, you will find that you're experiencing a lunar return on your solar return, very close to it. So this is when the moon, which returns by sign every month, by phase every month, it's when the moon returns by sign and phase at the same time, the Metonic cycle. And there's a gateway here between 18 and 19 where you also have your nodal return, the nodes returning to the original position, 18 and a half. And so part of my work and what I presented at NORWAC this year in a talk called Joy and Saros is this idea of how long is a nodal return. And the first time, I believe you have this window between the Saros return and the Metonic return, 18 to 19. But the second time that comes around, it's now a 2-year window, 36 to 38. Third time, 18 times 354, 19 times 357. So as we gain wisdom and experience in life, we have larger windows for our realignment to the nodal path. And what are the nodes but spirit and soul, and where they are one. All right. So maybe I'll just look at the chat one more time. People are just saying thank you. Can I make someone the presenter? I dare not, but maybe Adam can. And then some more rap about this Gurdjieff situation. Is lunar latitude the same as declination? Spencer asks. And this is actually an important question. We're 2 hours plus. Adam, are you? You are being a dad. There you are.
Can you hear me, Brett?
I can.
Okay, awesome. Hold on just one second. Okay, cool. So there's basically 2 options because I don't have child here to put my daughter to bed tonight. I have to go do that now. So because you're an organizer, you could keep going and just shut down the meeting on your own, or we could, basically wrap it up now, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I think I'll show another 10-minute thing and then I'll end the meeting. So I just have to see where end meeting is. Am I in charge of the recording then as well?
No, the recording will be put up to the cloud.
Okay.
And so that's no problem. There should be on the menu someplace on your end, there should be an exit meeting.
There's a file tab where I can just hit end meeting.
Yep.
So that's
Okay.
pretty cool. All right.
Perfect. Well, let me just say
now,
this in closing. Let me just tell everybody, if you haven't yet, I put the donation button one more time into the box. So please drop a donation in if you will. This has been an awesome talk. It's been wonderful to hear your wizardry, and my wife was sitting with me on the couch for a while listening to it too, and it was definitely generating conversation between us, like lots of things were bubbling. So this has been fantastic, and I hope that you'll have enjoyed it as well. And I'll just put this note out there, although we can't hopefully have to have you back at some point down the road, Brett. I think it would be really fun to do something again sometime. And then In the meantime, the fall speaker series will be out on the website shortly. You can check that out. And the first confirmed speaker is Becca Tarnas, who is the prodigy child of Richard Tarnas. She'll be doing a talk on J.R.R. Tolkien and the astrology of his life and Middle Earth and hobbits and Lord of the Rings, and that should be a real crowd pleaser. So I think it's gonna be super fun. So, and there'll be more to come as well. And so I just wanted to put that in there, and I'm gonna sign off for the night and hope you guys enjoy the end of the talk.
Awesome, Adam. Let me just say thank you, and I would be honored to come on anytime, and I would love to do that also as a conversation sometime and just bounce off one another. And I just very much appreciate this opportunity to come speak. I'm very honored. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you bet. That sounds like a lot of fun.
All right, hope to see you on Earth sometime soon. All right, folks, so this question about latitude and declination, it's a really important one. And I'm going to show you a little movie actually from my video course. And one that I'm building, I'm creating right now a video to, it's a lame word to use, but to arm astrologers with the astronomical wisdom and intelligence to defend ourselves in the state of attack when astronomers challenge the tropical zodiac and say that it's wrong because your sign isn't aligned to the constellation anymore and there needs to be this Ophiuchus thing. And so I'm just preparing for when that resurfaces so that when I get a gazillion emails, as I will, I can just give a link. But I've realized that in the process of building this, I've had to be very diligent and careful with my words. But also for my video course of Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers, I really want to show, what declination is, what latitude is. It's very interesting that if I speak about, as I do this a lot, right, that the sun's path is longitude. And we see that in the zodiac is just zodiacal degree. And latitude pairs with longitude, right? So that's now a planet's like distance above or below the zodiac. So if you're in the northern hemisphere right now and you've been checking out Mars and you know the constellations, Mars for the northern hemisphere is seriously low, like way down to Earth. And I think there's something very important about that. Also he's very south. So there's something about Mars reaching back into the past that in my own, like what I've suggested for a way we might delineate latitude. Mars is also out of bounds, which is not necessarily about latitude. Okay, so we pair as astrologers these days interesting longitude, zodiacal degree, with declination, which is measured from an entirely different plane. So let's look at that a little bit. I've got this video from the course up. I can show, let me make sure I share the screen. Let's get out of here. All right. Movies. Yeah. And I'm just going to close my video and let this play for a little bit. And secondary motions share a commitment to the cycle of yin and yang. Sunrise is like spring, midday like summer, sunset like autumn, midnight like winter. Sun rises and sets because Earth spins. But what is the reason for the seasons? The plane of Earth's primary motion, or daily rotation, is tilted in respect to the plane of Earth's secondary motion, or annual orbit, by an angle of about 23.5 degrees. The spin axis, the spine of Gaia, is always north-south, so at March equinox time, Sun is due east of Earth center. This is why we begin the natural zodiac and the astrological year with tropical Aries, because east is the place of the rise, new beginnings. Aries, Taurus, Gemini bring us to June solstice, when the northern axis of Earth is leaning towards the sun. Sun is due north of Earth's center. This is summer solstice for northern hemisphere, winter solstice for the southern. Cancer, Leo, Virgo bring us to September equinox, when sun is due west of Earth center. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius bring us to December solstice, when the southern axis of Earth is leaning towards the sun. Sun is due south of Earth's center, and this is summer solstice for the southern hemisphere, winter solstice for the northern hemisphere. Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces bring us back to March equinox, when sun is due east, the beginning of the next astrological year. Obviously, this model is not to scale, neither in terms of space nor time. The equinoxes and solstices aren't days, but rather moments, so Earth shouldn't be spinning at these stations. But I wanted to show you the cycle of shadow for all earthly latitudes that results from the annual dance of Earth about Sun. Conversely, Earth should be spinning more than 90 times between these stations, but our eyes would not be able to track that in such a short animation. The most important transmission of this clip is that Sun's apparent annual movement through the zodiacal signs and constellations results from Earth's secondary motion, our annual orbit about Sun. Very importantly, signs and constellations are different things. We'll get back to that. The signs of the tropical zodiac, shown here, are born of the cardinal directions, which themselves are established by the north-south spin axis of Earth, the axis of our primary motion, or daily rotation. Tropical Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are northern signs that head north. Cancer, Leo, Virgo, northern signs that head south. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, southern signs that head south. And Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, southern signs that head north. We experience this directional essence of the tropical zodiac in many ways here on Earth. One is through witnessing Sun's annual change of position on the eastern horizon at sunrise and on the western horizon at sunset. Another is the witness of the Sun's change in midday altitude, the change of length of day, the energy of the seasons. All of these can be tracked through the Sun's annual change in declination. Most astrology software will allow us to track the declination of sun, moon, and planets as they wander through the signs of the zodiac. Here we see the longitude, latitude, right ascension, and declination for sun at March equinox. What do these four variables describe? Right ascension and declination describe the angular position of a celestial object as measured from the celestial equator, which is the plane of Earth's primary motion or daily rotation. Right ascension describes a horizontal position along the celestial equator or projected to it, from 0 to 360 degrees or from 0 to 24 hours. Declination describes a vertical displacement from the celestial equator. A body with 0 degrees declination is on the celestial equator and is therefore seen directly above Earth's equator. 90 degrees north declination is directly above Earth's north pole at the north celestial pole, and 90 degrees south declination is directly above Earth's south pole at the south celestial pole. Longitude and latitude describe the angular position of a celestial object as measured from the ecliptic, which is the plane of Earth's secondary motion, or annual orbit about Sun. From Earth, we witness Sun circling this plane every year. Longitude describes the horizontal position along the ecliptic, or projected to it, from 0 to 360 degrees, or from 0 through 30 degrees of each of the 12 zodiacal signs. Latitude describes a vertical displacement from the ecliptic plane. Sun's latitude is always 0 degrees because Sun is always on the ecliptic. This is not true for Moon or any of the planets, which each have their own unique orbital plane. Longitude and right ascension are both measured from the tropical Aries point, where the celestial equator and ecliptic intersect due east of Earth's center. All right. So first of all, I got a couple messages that things were hung up in that video, so I apologize for that. I want to get this one image back up. Where is it? You see? You go away, you like get small or something. So very importantly, there's a couple things that just came through there, and I understand that maybe it didn't show up as well as we would have liked for it to, and now this video is just missing in action. Here we go. Okay, cool. So hopefully everyone can see this on their screen right now. And okay, fine on someone's end, great. Yeah, it looked a little glitchy on mine. This again, like go to morethan.astrology.com/free and just stick in your email and I'll send you a few different articles and things, and I'll send you this movie when I'm done with it. So hopefully everyone can see this weird circle that we've got going on. Okay, so I want to give some thanks to my girlfriend Anna Zaharia, who is helping me create a lot of these images. She's a wonderful illustrator for me to animate for the course. This is our logo here. So this is the tropical zodiac, right? And it's really founded on where the plane of our spin, the primary motion, the day, our primary experience of astronomy, and therefore astrology is day and night, and that's the celestial equator. That's Earth's equator projected out to space. And then the year, which is Earth about Sun, or Sun about Earth from our point of view, which is on this other plane, the ecliptic plane. And they cross in two places, right? So just like the moon's nodes, where from Earth's point of view, moon and sun cross, there's also in a sense these like Earth nodes, which are the equinox. So where Earth's spin or day and Earth's orbit or year, right? So it's like Earth and sun where they connect. And you saw in that video where I was talking about how Aries and Taurus and Gemini are northern signs that go north, and Cancer, Leo, Virgo are northern signs that go south. Well, think about that in regards to that whole snaking of moon about the sun's path and the north node and the northern bending. So if you've heard of the draconic zodiac, this is what we're doing. We're just saying if your north node is in, I don't know, Libra, then Libra for you is kind of like this because the moon is north going north in Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius until moon gets to the northern bending. And that's how Aries, Taurus, and Gemini work in the tropical zodiac. This is a very important thing to say, that the tropical zodiac is a completely accurate astronomical mechanism. So I'm going to leave that there. But we're talking about declination, which is why I showed all of this, okay? Because latitude is above or below, or I'll say north of or south of the sun's orbital plane, right? So let me go back here. Yeah, right. So this is the ecliptic, and it always goes through the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer. And so it's tilted in respect to Earth's spin, right? And so we're measuring latitude from there, but we're measuring declination from the celestial equator, okay? So let me bring them together again. And declination is really going to give you your experience of, is it high or low in so many regards. Hold on, this one. Because let's say you have the north node in Aries, the north lunar node in Aries, okay? That puts the northern bending at 0 in Cancer. Well, Cancer is already the most northern sign of the tropical zodiac, okay? So the moon at that point would find even a higher height in latitude above the ecliptic plane. And that's going to make the moon out of bounds. It's going to be seen in places north of the Tropic of Cancer directly overhead. I'll plant that seed. I explained all of that in this video. But let's say the moon had really high latitude in, let's say the south node of the moon was in Aries, okay? Well, that's going to bring their southern bending at 0 Cancer. So the moon would have extreme latitude there, but it'd be down here and closer to the celestial equator, which I call the circle of matter because it's all about Earth. It's all about Earth's spin, you see. So we're measuring declination from this place. You could have a planet at really extreme northern latitude in the sign of Capricorn, and it's going to be much closer to like the equinox level of the crossing of these two planes, right? So it's interesting that we're measuring zodiac, like the longitude on the ecliptic plane, and that really pairs with latitude, distance from the ecliptic. But we're usually working as astrologers with longitude and then with declination, which is measured from an entirely different plane. So for example, the declination of the 0 degrees Cancer of the tropical zodiac is 23.5 degrees. The declination of the 0 degrees Aries of the tropical zodiac is 0 degrees because it's on the celestial equator, on the circle of matter. So hopefully that's helped. I mean, I almost should just say, wait for the video, you know, because I'll be explaining it at the pace that you just experienced, but it's like an hour and a half long. It just takes me like a day to do 3 minutes of animation like that. It's forever. So somebody's asked, out of bounds moon, out of bounds equals far moon, or not measured that way? Not measured that way. So this, you know, and this would be a kind of cool way for us to conclude. The main thing I want to say here is the moon is so much more dynamic than we see on the chart until we start thinking of the astronomy, which doesn't have to be nerdy geek science class stuff. It is nature. And astrology is so much more than a poetic language alone. It is the poetic breath of nature. So when we learn to see that, well, that moon is high, or Mars right now is low, right? We can just open to amazing information that's not so visible on the chart. Once you see it in the sky and you bring it back to the chart, it totally makes sense. Okay, so out of bounds is not about the moon size. That is found from moon's aspect to Lilith, right? So if moon is close to Lilith, then it's far. And if it's far from Earth, it's slow and small and dim, the dimmest full moon possible. Opposite Lilith, close to Earth. So there's one thing. Now we have the nodes. The nodes are about latitude. So if this is the ecliptic, here are the nodes, okay? But that's from the ecliptic, okay? Out of bounds has to do with declination. And this is a trippy thing. But let's say you have extreme northern latitude in the sign of Libra, okay? So and we're coming into this pretty soon. Right, we've got the nodes are ingressing from tropical Leo Aquarius in November of this year. They will, in a sense, regress because they move back retrograde. The north node will move into tropical Cancer and the south node into Capricorn, right? Well, if the north node's in tropical Cancer, then the northern bending is in Libra, yeah? Right, south node in Capricorn and southern bending will be in Aries. Okay, well, if you have extreme latitude in Libra, it's not far from the celestial equator because 0 Aries and 0 Libra, the equinox points, are on the celestial equator. That's the definition of our tropical zodiac. That's the natural mechanism, actually, of our tropical zodiac. And I want to leave that there. I'll talk forever. So it's like, for example, the last thing, Pluto just crossed his south node, right? 19 degrees, 20 degrees, tropical Capricorn. This first of this triple eclipse portal was on Pluto's north node, opposite Pluto. Pluto is now doing this. So the moon does this every month, right? Well, Pluto does this every, 250 years, longer than that. Right? In the 80s, Pluto was way north. Yeah, and look in some astronomy software. If you were born then, it's a very powerful time for you because you'll be in Pluto square Pluto if you were born like 80, 81. And when you were born, Pluto was so far from the ecliptic at the northern bending, And now at Pluto square Pluto, Pluto's crossing the South Node. It's very an amazing and important astrological energetic happening for us for sure. Well, if the northern bending's in Libra, that's not going to take Pluto out of bounds. We have to already be up at these like solstice places that are already extremely far from the celestial equator, and then go further to be in places that the sun can never go. So when you see out of bounds phenomena, you will notice that it's usually in the signs of Gemini and Cancer or Sagittarius and Capricorn. Can be Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, but it's going to be closer to the solstice points because the equinox points are as in bounds as it can get. And it's a very important thing about declination, and I show this like very beautifully in this video, so I look forward to sharing it in the future. But you can look at the declination of the sun in any given moment. Like I'll just let's do one more image here, and I'll open Astro Gold software. Make sure that we're seeing, well, that's Intrepid actually. Let's go here. Okay, so here's right now, and sun's at 2309 Leo. All right. Well, the declination of the sun right now is 5 degrees. Wait, that's not possible. That's the moon. All right, the sun right now is at a declination of about 14 degrees, 13 degrees, 47 minutes. Okay. What's the declination of the sun when it's 0 Aries? And the answer is 0. That's when the sun is seen directly overhead midday over the equator. The declination of the sun at 0 Cancer at June solstice is about 23.5, and it's seen directly above the Tropic of Cancer. Okay. When the declination, like today, is 13 degrees and 47 minutes, the sun will zenith at midday directly above 13 degrees 47 minutes latitude on Earth. Okay. Well, let me share this one more time. And before I do, well, it looks like I'm still sharing anyway. No, here we go. Buttons. Let's look back to Moon, and Moon right now, very close to her bending, is at a declination of 5 degrees and 8 minutes south. So the latitude is 5 degrees. Let me actually get away from that. I'll just show Mars. Mars's declination currently right here, you can see 26.5 degrees south latitude. Okay, well, the Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degrees north about. Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south. So the sun during the course of the year is just moving above, though it's in that range between the tropics. Okay, from the Tropic of Capricorn to the Tropic of Cancer. And one of the points I make in this video is like, okay, NASA, if you want to tell me that there's a problem with my constellations and the signs not being aligned, why aren't you calling that the Tropic of Sagittarius now? You're still calling it the Tropic of Capricorn, right? And I show a lot of things about where our glyphs come from and yada, yada. Well, Mars right now, 26.5 degrees south latitude, which means Mars is culminating directly overhead when Mars is at the midheaven for 26.5 degrees south latitude on Earth. So Mars is going overhead in a place where the sun never, ever, 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 ever can, 3 degrees south of the Tropic of Capricorn. That is out of bounds phenomena. And that is way out of bounds on the time I was supposed to share today. So thanks for joining me, friends. It's really nice to see you here. Thank you so much for your donations. Literally, it's I'm moving house, as I explained before. It's like a important time for me to stay afloat in that regard, and it's very much appreciated. And thank you especially for choosing to be a planet person and support other planet people. So thank you to Adam once again and to Nightlight Astrology for having me here. What an amazing honor. And I hope to see all of you on Earth someday. I hope you'll consider coming to Tucson in October. So morethan.astrology.com is where you can find me. OPA, astrology.org is where you can find out more about that event. And I look forward to meeting you on Earth someday, but until then, I will see you in space.